Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AIM on MS&T podcast. I'm your host, Kate, and I'm so glad you have joined us today. If you are new here, let's catch you up. AIM stands for Academia, Industry, and Military, which are the sectors that form the foundation of the modeling, simulation, and training community right here in Central Florida. Together, they make up what is known as Team Orlando, a collaborative partnership driving innovation and mission readiness through MS&T. Each episode, we sit down with leaders and innovators within the MS&T world to talk about what's new, what's next, and why it matters, especially to our Team Orlando community. Whether you're deep in the field or just curious about one of Orlando's biggest industries, second only to the theme parks and hospitality industry, we're here to keep you informed, inspired, and part of the conversation. This episode is brought to you in part by Capital Communications and Consulting, telling your story across all platforms with a clear focus and innovative impact. Whether you want to elevate your message, grow your presence, or connect with the right audience, the C3 team will help bring your story to life. Learn more at mycapitalcommunications.com. Today, our guest is Ariane Fikki, Director of Partnerships at VRARA. Thank you for joining us today. To start us off, I'd love to hear a bit about your journey and what initially sparked your interest in immersive technologies such as VR, AR, MR, and the world of simulation.
Well, thank you, Kate. It is my pleasure to be here with you. The journey has been really interesting for me. So when I think back, my first experience that led me to this path was in XR. And my boys had received, I have 3 boys. My oldest is a sergeant in the Army, active duty Akonis in Hawaii. My younger 2 are now 12 and 13. And this was a few years back now, but they were fairly young. But they received an Oculus for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And our first experience in the ISS in VR. Oh. And it was a really cool experience that kind of opened my eyes up. And I was working in education, higher education. And I kept thinking about how we can maybe train differently or have presence or learn in unique environments. And so that got me interested in the Virtual Reality Augmented Reality Association, which later brought me to where I am right now.
It's fascinating to hear what initially sparked your interest. From there, can you share a bit about your career journey and how you arrived at your current role?
Sure. So my career journey was a little bit different than the typical, I think, in our space. I started off fairly young. My first career was in colleges and higher education in healthcare training. Oh. And I remember early on being in a nursing lab, and nursing labs, this was 20 years ago. At the time, they had very expensive, awkward equipment for simulation. And I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way than these giant, mannequin dummies that you interact with for training. And it was kind of limiting with nurses and how they could interact. And I remember thinking there's got to be a better way in how we navigate training and how we interact and learn, right? And years later, during COVID, actually, it forced me to be creative because schools had to learn how to navigate differently when you have in-presence classes. And so I started working for a technology company that was doing training for companies and the military for certifications and credentials. And it kind of re-sparked my imagination of younger times I had. My dad was a scientist, and it reminded me of a passion that I had for technology. And so I started to engage and learn more about what was happening in the current climate, and how we could use VR to interact and engage and learn. Decided to connect with the Virtual Reality Augmented Reality Association, which is the VRARA. And it's a global organization, and they have about, a little over 50 chapters across the world. And I was invited to be part of the Immerse Global Summit in Miami. At that time, didn't know a single person. I decided to volunteer. I actually skipped a little part of something that I think is important. when I started using the Oculus with the boys, I realized there was an opportunity to connect with others, and I started doing some exploring and was able to connect with a few communities on the MetaQuest Oculus, and it was in Horizon Worlds. And so we eventually would hold women's meetups and meetups for veterans, as well as networking events and for business and technology. And people would come from all over the world, and we would chat about different things and share ideas, kind of like we do at, our networking events.
Right.
But you would be in a headset. And through that, I was actually invited to the VRARA Immerse Global Summit to volunteer. And that was actually, I think, a big part of what started my journey of really jumping in the community and getting involved. There, I met a ton of people. So this was at the Fontainebleau in Miami. And there was a bunch of people there that I had never met before, and realized there was this incredible ecosystem of individuals. A lot of them came from Orlando in particular. And I lived in Orlando.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I never knew there was this incredible community in the same place that I'm living, right? And so I made a lot of great contacts. And when I returned, within a few months, I had connected with a few people, and I was suggested to apply for a role at Unity. And actually, after a little bit of conversation, decided to apply. And within a few months, I was working as a senior client partner at Unity on the government aerospace and defense team.
Wow.
But I think that was an important step, because for me, I was in my 40s. I had worked in higher education for a long time. I was pretty comfortable. I was a mom of 3 boys. But I had this little something inside of me that wanted to do more and get more involved in technology and how we could really make impact. And so I did make a big career change in the middle, mid-career, right? And so that was really kind of a nerve-wracking time for me to make such a big change, but I haven't really looked back since. So
that's amazing. Can you also talk about the history of immersive technologies and its impact on modeling, simulation, and training communities?
Absolutely. Well, I think the best way to kind of talk about the history is that a couple years ago, I met Dr. Tom Furness. And Dr. Tom Furness is considered the grandfather of VR. He's also a very big influence in the simulation community. He designed the cockpits of fighter jets.
Oh, wow.
And he actually, the F-35, he created the virtual cockpit for the F-35, which, and he's an incredible human being. But he was somebody early on that pioneered the use of virtual reality and simulation as we know it today in the Air Force. And that is a huge part of everything we know today, especially in our community, right? And so I was able to interact with him, and he is on the West Coast of the United States, but been able to connect. He's given me lots of guidance through the years, but he's somebody that was an early on pioneer, but there's so many other individuals, like Dr. Carolina Cruz is another one. Dr. Furness was like during the 60s, his time. Dr. Cruz was in like the 80s and 90s and still till today, right? As a XR woman who's pioneered in simulation. But we've always used simulation in a variety of ways, just different forms of it, right? And it's just kind of progressed. Pioneers, I think, that came before us used it to solve challenges or to simulate experiences for research. And now we see it for not only research, but we see it for entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Even like Disney is one of the largest digital twins, and actually a very sophisticated digital twin that's just down the road, right? But they use it to track everything from the moment you walk in, even when you leave and you interact with your app on your phone.
Right.
Or the invite they send you in your email. So they track all that data. I would say that it's interesting to see that the military has really kind of started a lot of the use of simulation and brought us to where we see, and we were talking about earlier, dual use, right? How we can tackle a lot of the challenges of the world. And so anything dangerous, expensive, or hard, we can use XR and or simulation to support.
Building on that, what are some of the technologies that have evolved in the VR/AR realm? And can you describe how those programs impacted the evolution of simulations?
That's a good question. I've seen a lot of advancements, even in the last 4 years, everything from like spatial computing, AI driven simulation. Pixel streaming is a big one that I'm really interested in right now. Secure pixel streaming. There's lots of options, but when it comes to like military use or secure use or for research, that's a big one, is to keep the data secure.
Right.
So I would say real-time collaboration across multiple sites, where you have some using a headset, some are using they're viewing a digital twin on a screen, virtual command centers. So maybe it's not only for military, but for emergency response or security or for saving people in their homes from wildfires. So, yeah.
You've mentioned some really exciting advancements shaping simulation today. Looking ahead, where do you see VR going in the future?
So without getting too heavy, so the way I look at it, in my opinion, and I think it's interesting that right now we are living in the progression of the 3D internet. So the internet as we know it, when the internet first started, just to give you some reference, that's when I tell you my dad was a scientist. So my dad helped contribute to the initial internet. He was a Java developer. So when I was, you know, maybe 9, 10, or 11, he was working, he had on the Java development type programming. But he was a chemist by trade and had gone back to college to learn about computer programming and Java development, and became a contributor to the internet as we know it and Bluetooth technologies. So everything smart, he contributed to that. And that at the time we called the Internet of Things. And so when I was a young girl, that made a huge impression on me to kind of understand how the world around us would be communicating without any human influence necessarily, right? Yeah. And that was kind of like wild to imagine. This is like in the 90s, early 90s. And so now when I think about the next rendition, because the internet is really around, it's the earth, right? So now we're talking about the internet and basically the battlefield and everything within it, from Earth is now to Mars. So everything between will have to have some kind of connectivity so that we can keep people safe and maybe explore and travel and also maintain systems. And to me, that's what we call the next rendition of the internet, which right now, when you are looking at the internet, you're scrolling, right? Next, we're going to be standing inside of it. And so how you do that is with sensors, and there's lots of data and communication flowing and bidirectional digital twins and robust systems where you can pull real-time data and sharing data. And this is all happening without all humans necessarily knowing and interacting with it, but they have the benefit of decision making. And think of your home as a smart home, right? Some people have the Nest system for thermostat, an application for their air purifier or their Ring doorbell. Those are all components that we're building into the living web. That's kind of what I call it. And so it's almost like a living, evolving system that we can interact with and make decisions.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So instead of just looking at the internet, we will all be standing in it. And it's already happening, like filters on your phone. So when you're on like Snapchat or Instagram and you use a filter, you're in the 3D internet. You're using augmented reality on your cell phone. So I'm excited about that. And I'm really excited about systems in space that have autonomous transacting. I'm kind of nerding out right now, but we don't have any kind of there's no systems on the moon or Mars that we can support any kind of exploration, even if it was robots, right? Which humans aren't ready, but we're working hard to get there to be sustained on the moon and Mars. But imagine that there's a system of like rovers and drones and robots that will help build the framework, and there's no human necessarily there to operate them. Maybe they're on missions to pull samples and to create and make deliveries and all kinds of different things. So there'll be some types of systems that will be transacting and creating using smart contracts. And yeah, so that's kind of exciting to me, is how we're going to use it to tackle the interplanetary frontier. That's really interesting to me. And so it is amazing, though, I have to say, that my biggest accomplishment is the fact that I'm the mom of 3 boys. And I will tell you, because of all the hard work I know you guys do here, and it is a badge of honor that I wear when I go places near and far to talk about our community, is that it really excites me and drives my passion to say we are the Center for Simulation. And actually, I say this very proudly, but it's not just the national, but I think we're the Center for Simulation for the world. Yeah. And we set an example here. We have, a greater than $7 billion simulation industry that's only going to grow, that supports, everything dangerous, expensive, and hard, including space, right? So I think it's something I'm really proud of. And so for me to go and be able to change careers and to jump in, the biggest thing that I think was a valuable lesson is that we need more mid-career women to decide how they see themselves in space. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be an astronaut. There's lots of different things that are important, like telling the story or showing up and being present for communities, and that we can all jump in, and we all have to actually jump in to get to where we want to go, because we can't do it alone. So
that's true.
Yep.
As these technologies continue to evolve, decision-making becomes even more strategic. How do you identify which emerging technologies are worth pursuing in your field? And what are the biggest barriers you've encountered when trying to implement immersive technology?
Ooh, that's a good one. My favorite thing to do is to scout technology. I love it. And I have to tell you, I don't feel like I've had to work super hard to find the technologies. I do think about often, okay, what am I missing that I don't know about? And so I try to be present in as many places as possible and make as many connections so that individuals who are making technology know to come to me and share.
You never know.
Right. It's easier than trying to chase them down, to like kind of make it known that, hey, I'm on the hunt for really cool things and to solve big challenges that we have, right? I would say that the hardest part of that is sometimes there's technologies that are so bleeding edge that I have to do a lot of research to truly understand. But I have to say, that's where the collaboration with our community, like where I can reach out to our partners through the National Center for Simulation. There's a number of sponsors and board members who are like an awesome network of individuals who have expertise. And I can say, hey, what do you know about this? And tell me your thoughts. Like, what are the things that you see? What is it that you'd like to see? Have you heard of this? And so I've been able to really lean on those partners.
Yeah.
And then also some of my like international partners as well that are allies. I try to always stay near and true to that, because that helps us with the things I'm working on personally and professionally, because I do have community work and my business that I do with government, aerospace, and defense still. So I would say I'm leaning on the community of leaders who have past performance, and then connecting with the community who are working hard on the technologies to see what they're working on and what their thoughts are. So I try to stay as active as possible in the community. And people joke all the time, I see you everywhere.
Yeah.
But it actually is like an extra. So the passion I have for this, and part of it is the team you guys have here is really awesome, but it's like an extra battery pack, and I feel really driven to contribute. And so I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like a little extra battery pack, like a Energizer bunny of energy that I get when I think about these challenges and how we can jump in and support. And it might be, some of it might be because I've got 2 young boys who are very interested in space, and they're also in aeronautics. And that drives me as a mom, to think about, okay, what's the world they're going to live in and work in?
Yeah,
and how
true.
can I contribute to that? And also I have an Army son, right, who's doing hard work. And I think about that as well. But I think there's that 10 or 11-year-old girl in me that sat there with my dad. And watched him work so hard on something that you really had to use your imagination to understand. And instead of kind of being like, oh, Dad, that's kind of out there, I was really into what he was sharing. I was like, wow, this is cool. Like to imagine like using technology to solve the challenges of the world and, working with international people, even at that time, and helping him with his business. So it's kind of like I take a sense of pride that I could contribute, and I see myself being able to contribute to something much bigger than myself.
If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, make sure to check out part 2, coming your way exactly 2 weeks from today. We'll pick up right where we left off and dive into more great questions and insight you won't want to miss. And with that is a wrap on part 1. Want to stay in the loop on what's happening in the modeling and simulation and Team Orlando communities? Head to teamorlando.org and follow us on LinkedIn, X, and Facebook for all the latest updates and upcoming events. If you're looking to spotlight your organization or share your voice on AIM on MS&T, sponsorship and guest opportunities are available. Contact us. The information will be in the description. Once again, I would like to thank Ariane for joining us today. Don't forget to follow AIM on MS&T on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye!